By the time I'd got to the hospital, I was really thinking that the contractions really were getting quite intense. So when I got there, they got me hooked up to the CTG machine again, which I've got another video where I talk about that, and so you can check that out. But they strapped me up to the machine, and yes, they could see that the baby's heart was doing really well, and that the contractions were in fact coming every 3 minutes, but they weren't lasting very long. They were short, I think 20 to 30 seconds. So the woman checked my cervix and I wasn't even dilated, and I was thinking, oh my god, the contractions are quite intense and I haven't even started to dilate. What is going to happen in this labour? How intense is this going to get? So, and they said, have your waters broken? And I knew that they had, but because the cervix was closed, they had to do a special kind of like a litmus test, it looked like. So she took a swab and she dipped something in some sort of solution. I don't know exactly what she did. And when it came through, she said, oh, I can see, yes, I can verify that your waters have broken. So what that meant was that, yes, I would have to give birth probably within, they'd like to induce within the next 24 hours if it didn't happen naturally. So what they said to us was, the next thing was a little bit weird, was they said they can monitor me for 4 hours, and then after 4 hours they would induce the labour. But we had to decide before whether we wanted to go for an induction before they started monitoring me. So the option was be monitored for 4 hours and then get induced, or go back home or walk around the hospital was another option, and then we could see how it goes, see if it progressed naturally. So I was under the impression, or I've been told, that if you are induced that your contractions can be a bit more intense, and I was already feeling quite intense and I thought, well, I don't want to make this even worse. So we decided that we were going to sort of stay around the hospital. And then what they offered me was, they actually said, would you like a bed on the antenatal ward? And we said, oh yes, that would be great. And boy, am I glad we get a bed, because the moment they got me down onto the bed, my waters broke like gushing, and all I kept thinking was, thank God I didn't go back in the car and try to get home. Can you imagine all of the water going everywhere? I was just so relieved that that didn't happen. So they kind of got me on the bed and the water just kept on coming out, just loads. And then I was getting even more excited because I was like, it's happening. But clearly I was in a bit of pain from the contractions, so I wasn't that excited, but in my head I was pretty excited. So this must have been now about probably 1 o'clock in the morning. And they said to me, look, because your contractions are not lasting that long and you haven't slept, we're going to have to give you some pithidine. So I know I spoke to you about pain relief in labour in another video, and I was against having any drugs, but the nurses said that because I was actually nowhere near labour and I had to get some sleep, otherwise I wouldn't have any energy to do the labour, they really did recommend that I would have it, because by the time the baby was born it would have worn off. So they gave me the pithidine and it really did help me sleep, and I managed to get some sleep, or I felt like I was just lying in the bed for hours. So they gave me that, and then after a few hours, probably about 4 or 5 in the morning, I woke up and I was actually throwing up. So if you are throwing up and you're in labour, don't worry about it. It is actually normal. There's nothing to worry about. I was going to the toilet, I was coming back forwards, and I was thinking, wow, this is taking hours and hours. What's going to happen? Is someone going to come and see what's going on? And then eventually my husband said to the nurses, the midwives on the labour ward, is someone going to come and check my wife? So, eventually all night had gone by, and then sometime in the morning, eventually a doctor came to see me, and they said to me, oh yes, you're 7 centimetres dilated. I think we should sort of take you upstairs. And I was like, 7 centimetres? Does that mean we can start now? And they said, yes, we probably should have started at around, that sometimes you go up into active labour when you're around 4 to 5 centimetres. So I was a little bit shocked. So when I was 7 centimetres, they got me in a wheelchair and they wheeled me up onto the proper ward. I went into a room and I asked for relaxing music, which was part of my birth plan. I initially wanted to go in the birthing suite, but when push came to shove, I really didn't care what room I was in. It was private, it was nice, had my husband, the bed was there. So then they kind of got me on the bed, and I was kneeling on the bed on my knees and holding the back of the bed, and I was in that position probably for most of the labour, but then I also got off the bed, I also got on a mat on the floor, I was on all fours, I was on the ball, and I was so happy to have my husband there. He was a great birthing partner, he was holding my hand all the time. So as the birth went on, it was actually going on for quite a while. I went in there at about 10 o'clock and my little +1 baby didn't come out until 1:47. You might think, gosh, that sounds like quite a long time. But I found out afterwards that the reason being that it was taking such a long time was because the cord was wrapped on her shoulder. And they actually don't tell you this while you're pushing, and I think it's because they don't want to stress you. But what happened was, after many hours, and I was absolutely drained, I had no energy left, the contractions were really strong, I was pushing so hard, I'd been up all night. Eventually they said, oh, we're going to give you some help. And suddenly 7 or 8 doctors all rushed in the room. It did sort of freak me out a little bit, because it was suddenly one midwife to all these doctors in masks and sort of, you know, in all their proper gear. And I thought to myself, oh my God, they're going to give you a cesarean after all this time of pushing, that's what they're going to do. And they said, look, we're just going to give you some help, and we're going to give you a cup down there just to help the baby out. And I thought, oh, phew. And then they said, look, just relax, just relax. And actually, my birth plan was that I didn't want to give birth on my back, but I had to go on my back. But one thing that they did do was they got the stirrups out. So whilst I was on my back, I did have my legs right up so that the birth canal was really, really wide, just enough for her to go out. So they cut me and I gave one last push. I grabbed my husband's hand and I squeezed it really, really tight, and I pushed it so hard, and suddenly I felt whoosh, and she came out, and it was they had to, you know, they had to cut, they had to stitch me up, and it was such a great relief after all that time. It was amazing. They put the baby onto you, and all of the pain that you felt, all of the labour that you've gone through, the contractions, all those hours, it melts away into nothing, and it's just amazing. But one thing I do have to tell you is that it does, when you're giving birth, it feels like you're doing a really big poo. That is the one thing that it does feel like. So all of you who have not gone through it before, or you're worried about it, just think of it, it's like doing a real big poop. And all of you mums that have gone through it, do you agree? Let me know what you think, and tell me about your labour story.